This is The Toss-Up, where we take a look at some of the topics facing the world of sports and then we dive deeper. Whether it's your best friend's fantasy team or the future of college athletics, we're just trying to expand the conversation. We just want to take a look at the topics that keep you tuned in to the beautiful world of sports. The phrase, "it's Miller time," has multiple meanings. For many people, when they hear that phrase, they think of the wildly popular alcoholic beverage that you crack open with the boys. But for others, and more specifically in Bloomington, it has a different meaning. Kind of. Archie Miller took the reins of a program in April that was recently brought back to relative success by Tom Crean. Everyone has their own opinions on Coach Crean and the job he did in Bloomington, but now it's Miller time. And Miller time had a bit of a rocky start. Coach Miller was given a team that had just lost 3 players to the NBA who couldn't even get back to the NCAA tournament just a year removed from winning the Big Ten title. In his first game at the helm for the Hoosiers, it was a catastrophe. The Sycamores ran the Hoosiers out of their own gym. Then the light got a little brighter with a spirited effort against Duke and an overtime victory versus Notre Dame. But then tragedy struck once again. For the second year in a row, the Hoosiers had lost to Fort Wayne. Ever since that loss, however, things have been going pretty smoothly, other than the usual yearly hiccup in Madison, Wisconsin. And welcome to Season 4 of The Toss-Up. I'm your host, Jacob Vinson, and joining me to talk some IU basketball this week is IUS TV basketball beat reporter Zan Piarli, IDS basketball reporter Murphy Wheeler, and Assembly Call contributor Michael Dugan. And guys, let's just get right into it. The Hoosiers right now, 11-7 on the season, 4-2 in the Big Ten, and they've won their last 3 games. So far, what do you guys think of Archie's job that he's done?
Well, so far, Archie's done as good as a job as he possibly can. I know early on in the season you mentioned it was a little rocky, especially the first game against Indiana State, but this team has come a long way since then, and especially I want to look at defending the three-point ball. Against Indiana State, they gave up 17 three-pointers, and then against Fort Wayne, again 17 threes. But ever since then, defensively, they've locked down very nicely, and game by game, they seem to be improving, especially looking at that last game against Northwestern, holding them to 46 points. Pretty impressive on the defensive side.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I expected anything more out of him. I mean, he had new personnel with this new team. They had to buy into his system. They're slowly starting to do that now, but we knew it was going to take some time. And we can't really compare him to other, first-year coaches that are having success right now, like Chris Holtmann at Ohio State. Those are anomalies. You can't really compare him to those. I think he's done a fine job. I didn't expect anything more out of him.
100% agree with you. I think the word I would use has been fine. He's had those hiccups. You talked about Indiana State and Fort Wayne. And then that big Northwestern victory. Granted, Northwestern's kind of in a free fall right now. Yeah. But that's a talented team that was, maybe a whistle away from the Sweet 16 last year. So that's a good win, especially when you can defend the way that they did, like you said. And that Notre Dame game could have been the turning point in this season. We'll see. There's still over a month left. But that could have been the turning point in this season. They've had growing pains. They've improved in certain areas in certain games, cutting the turnovers down, and then defensively defending the three-pointer. Every aspect of the game has been improved upon, and they've regressed on others as the season's gone on. But as a whole, I think they've improved since the start, and that's really all we could ask for from Archie Miller.
Now, Michael, you mentioned how it could have been a turning point in that Notre Dame game, and we really saw the emergence of Juwan Morgan, who's been having a very good year. He had 34 points in that game, a career high for him, but Zach McRoberts really stepped up in that game as well, and ever since then, he's been getting a lot of playing time and started the last few games. What have those two players, along with the rest of the team, but those two players especially, how have their emergence helped the team so far?
Well, I think you look at Juwan Morgan. Juwan's in a league of his own. Juwan is the best player on this basketball team, far and away. And I think in conference play is averaging pretty close to 20 points a game, close, I think, to 8 rebounds or so. He's a double-double machine, and anytime he goes out there, he performs on both ends of the glass. The thing I love about Juwan is his mindset. He said earlier in the year, guys think whenever they take a shot, it's going in. But for him, he always thinks it's a miss. That's how he's able to get on the glass and get those offensive rebounds. Same with Zach McRoberts. Against Notre Dame, big offensive rebound off the missed free throw from Juwan Morgan. Got the board, dished it to Morgan. Morgan with the finish. They ended up winning the game in overtime. So both of those guys, huge. Zach McRoberts also big on defense, and especially moving forward whenever Indiana's playing some bigger teams that don't have Deron Davis. Zach McRoberts is a valuable piece to shut down some of the bigger players that they need right now.
Yeah, I'm not overly surprised by McRoberts' play because he's doing the same thing he's always done when he's been here at IU. He's doing the little things, and I think they're just getting noticed a little bit more now. He's jumping on loose balls. He's being in the right positions on defense, not just playing good on-ball defense, but off-ball as well, being in the right positions. But Juwan has been really promising just because he's doing what they needed him to do to be successful as a team. They needed him to step up offensively, and he's been a monster down low. He has really good footwork. He's always had pretty good footwork down low, but now he's gotten a lot stronger. He's getting in good positions down low, and he's hard to stop. He's just really hard to stop. And whenever, I think it was their game against Wisconsin where they were getting killed by Ethan Happ on defense. Juwan got in some foul trouble, which he's had a problem with a few games this year. But every time they got him the ball down low, he was scoring. He was so important to them just to kind of keep them in that game and, not let them get killed, honestly.
He took over that Notre Dame game, too, down low against All-American Bonzie Colson. Don't forget that. He's starting to shoot the three ball now more a little bit. He had 5 threes in his last 3 games. He had 2 made threes the entire season up to that point. So he's got confidence in his jump shot. I mean, you said he's on another level. He's kind of taking this team by the horns right now and really taking the driver's seat. I want to talk about McRoberts, too. Last year, like you said, he did a lot of the little things that people liked. This year, he's doing those little things again, but he's doing them for an extended period of time. He's not letting up whether he plays 5 minutes, 15, or even 20. He's doing those things, taking the best offensive player on the opposite team, man-to-man at the top of the key, banging up against someone down low, diving for loose balls, extending offensive possessions, which was huge in that Notre Dame game by grabbing offensive rebounds. And he's not a scorer, and he knows that. He knows his role on this team. So if he gets the ball and there's a defender in front of him, he'll keep swinging it, move it to the next guy, and set a screen to get someone else open. He knows his role on this team, and he's playing it as well as anyone can play it.
And the thing I love about McRoberts is that at the beginning of the season, I think the first 7 games or so, he either played single-digit minutes or he didn't play at all. And he's just kept working in practice, and Archie noticed that, obviously. He's like, okay, this guy's a lockdown defender. He's a great rebounder. He's going to do everything that the other guys don't want to do. And now he's earning his playing time as a starter for this team after not even playing at all at the beginning of the year.
So obviously those are 2 guys that have bought into Archie Miller's system, bringing in a system that was very defensive-minded, and it seems like the rest of the team has started to buy in, especially players like Josh Newkirk and Robert Johnson, who it probably took a little bit for them to get into it, don't you think?
Yeah, the last 3 games have been Josh Newkirk's best games. Actually, other than Minnesota, the last 2 games, Penn State and Northwestern, and on both sides of the ball, he's scoring and he's playing great defense. Robert Johnson, too. Robert Johnson, ever since the Louisville game where he didn't score a point, and then he came back against Notre Dame, he had a rocky first half. Second half was great. Ever since then, he's been on another level, and he's been the leader that Indiana needs, both on offense and defense. And then same with guys like Devontae Green. Devontae Green, he might not be shooting the ball very well, but defensively, he's got quick hands. He plays great defense. He's a very smart, defensive-minded guy, and he's able to force a lot of turnovers, which helps Indiana.
Yeah, I think the guards are slowly starting to buy in, and you can see that just because they're having success finally, and I think that's what they're going to have to do. We've said it all year. They're going to have to buy into that system right away if they're going to have any success, and I know they've had hiccups along the way, Indiana State, Fort Wayne, and I think that was a product of some of the guys kind of getting used to the system, and I think now that they're starting to do that, first of all, they're playing much better defense, which is huge for them now, and especially in the Big Ten, where you don't have a lot of teams that are really high-scoring teams. If you can keep it, low scoring, you're always going to have a chance to win. It doesn't matter who you're playing, if it's Purdue or Rutgers, it's always going to be a good game usually. So I think as long as they keep doing that, they're going to be in a good position going forward.
And when you change head coaches that have 2 pretty different philosophies, it's an awful lot to ask those guys to buy in immediately. A lot of the time, you're going to go through the majority of a season with some guys still trying to figure out where they need to be at what time, what they need to be doing in that certain spot, and all the philosophies that this new coach is bringing to the table. So it's definitely a learning process, and I think that, with Tom Crean's tenure in the past now, which was, full of, to a lot of people, inconsistencies and unfulfilled expectations, people are growing impatient, and people, I think, for the most part, had unrealistic expectations. Not everyone, but some people had some unrealistic expectations for this team to buy in, be ready for Indiana State, and, run through non-conference play with a couple of big wins and, sit in the top 3 of the Big Ten right now. Again, unpopular opinion, but there were some of those people out there. For the majority of that crowd, I think that these guys are buying in like you guys said. And they're buying in as the season goes on. People are growing at different rates, which is, again, to be expected. So all in all, I think this is going exactly how it should be. People are buying in. There are no miracles happening like Holtman at Ohio State, and it's not a complete and utter embarrassment. People are growing, figuring it out. I think it's good.
All right, so now looking ahead, they've won their last 3 games, and obviously you can just come out and say, oh, well, they're playing better defense. But what specifically they're doing, you got to remember, they just lost Deron Davis as well, their big man down low, and it seems like they're playing a little bit better basketball.
Well, yeah, I mean, losing Deron, obviously huge. You can't, forget about that because he's such a big body down there, and obviously it hurts their depth now in their front court. But the guard play had to step up, and they have stepped up. And I talked about Devontae Green on defense, and you can go back and look at that Northwestern game. There's 4 or 5 plays that he's just being disruptive with his hands. He's being quick, and they're all just being a lot quicker. And even though they might be undersized, they're helping each other out. And I think Robert Johnson said after that game is that they don't want to let that guy to their right or to their left down. They're playing very connected on defense, team defense, and that's what they need to do right now, especially if they're undersized and need to, going up against Purdue. Purdue's got 2 guys that are over 7 foot. That'll be a very interesting game. And then even looking at Michigan State's got a lot of big bodies too. So just getting it done with quickness on defense, I think, is the big key for me. Yeah,
it's no secret the defense has stepped up big time. And I think you made a good point earlier. I think it was talking about Robert Johnson. Their leadership has been much better. You can tell their on-court leadership has been so much better, especially on the defensive end. And everybody's kind of, buying into their leadership. And they're going to have to step up when you lose such a big contributor like Deron Davis. You need your veterans to step up and be big, and they have in a big way so far. And, they do need to get a little bit more consistent offensively. They need to get a little bit more consistent shooting from the outside. That's definitely something they need to improve on going forward. But, they'll get better offensively, I think. You've seen Robert Johnson, play well offensively in the past. You've seen Josh Newkirk have his games as well. Even Devontae Green has had his games here and there. So I think just more consistency offensively will take them even farther.
Well, their perimeter defense has improved tremendously. Last year, they struggled mightily defending on and off ball screens wherever they were. This year, like you said, Devontae Green at almost all times has been the quickest guy, maybe the second quickest guy on the basketball court. So he's able to get around these screens and stick whoever he's assigned to, whether it was Scotty Lindsey, Vic Law, this past weekend against Northwestern, or Edwards or whoever on Purdue going down the road. He's able to stick these guys. And Robert Johnson on Scotty Lindsey against Northwestern last weekend was outstanding. Scotty Lindsey forced some bad shots. He had a cold shooting night. I think he was 1 of 15. 1 of 15. I mean, it's not all to Robert Johnson's credit, but it's partially to Robert Johnson's credit. And when you've got a guy that's a capable scorer like Scotty Lindsey, and I know this is just one game, but it was a huge game defensively for Robert Johnson, just a big game for Indiana as a whole defensively. I'm pointing to that game to look at not just where Robert Johnson, or when Robert Johnson and Devontae Green kind of turned the corner defensively, but these 2 guys right now are the team's 2 best perimeter defenders, and they're playing like very, very good top-tier perimeter defenders in the Big Ten, which is something that we didn't really see out of those guys specifically, or really in any Indiana guard in the last couple of seasons.
So perimeter defense, consistency, and seniors stepping up have really been the key to Indiana's success so far. Right now we're going to send it to a break, but coming up after the break, our panel will take a look ahead at the rest of the season for IU basketball. Stick with us. Welcome back to the Toss-Up. We've talked some IU basketball up to this point in the season, but now it's time to start looking forward to what the road ahead might lay out for the Hoosiers. Before we jump in, let's send it over to Austin Matricardi for a look at Indiana basketball's recent success by the numbers.
Thanks, Jacob. Indiana had a choppy start to their season, but the month of January has been kind to them. They've got a 3-1 record in 2018 with victories over conference foes Minnesota, Penn State, and Northwestern. And it's largely due to their improvement on the defensive end. Archie Miller's Dayton teams made their name on defense and by taking care of the ball, and it seems like that system is starting to take hold in Bloomington. After giving up 77 points per game in the first 2 months of the season, they've given up an average of just 64 points in the new year. That mark would be the 5th best in the Big Ten if held up for the whole season, compared to the 11th best mark that Indiana sits at now. The Hoosiers are also forcing more turnovers in this recent run of success. They've forced 14.8 turnovers per game in their last 4 contests, up 2 from their average from the first 2 months of the season. It may not seem like much, but that's a potential 6-point swing in a game. On the other hand, the Hoosier offense is doing a better job of taking care of the ball. They're down to 10 turnovers per game after some stretches early in the season where they turned the ball over nearly 15-20 times in a game. Another problem that the Hoosiers had on offense early in the year was free throw shooting. The Hoosiers hit 68% of their shots from the charity stripe in November and December, but they're converting nearly 75% of those shots now. After 2 months, Indiana finally appears to be adopting and executing Archie Miller's preferred style of play at a high level, and they're doing all this without star center Deron Davis, who tore his Achilles just days before their clash with the Golden Gophers. If they keep this up, they should be able to compete with the best teams in the Big Ten and have a shot at an NCAA tournament berth. Back to you, Jacob.
Thank you, Austin. So, guys, let's just get right into it. Looking ahead at Indiana, they've won their last 3, but now they have a tough road stretch coming up. They got Michigan State coming up. What is that game going to be like for them, especially since they're tied for 3rd in the Big Ten right now?
Yeah, Michigan State is going to be very tough. All right, let's just say that. I think Michigan State's favored by 16 or so going into this game, and that's going to be an environment that Indiana really hasn't played in a while. I mean, I guess their toughest road game to this point in the Big Ten was probably Michigan way back in December, and even Wisconsin in the early parts of January. Yeah, they played at Minnesota, which is always tough as well, but Michigan State will be the toughest place that they've played all season long. And Michigan State, I mean, they just have athletes, they have depth, they cause problems all over the floor, offense on defense. So it's going to be really tough for Indiana to convert in this game. But, I mean, if they hold them to about 60 points or so, somewhere in the 60s, play good defense like they did against Northwestern, should be a good game.
Yeah, and we talked about how Michigan State's size is going to be a problem for IU, and I think that's going to be any team they play, though, this year. They're going to have small lineups now that Deron Davis is out with an injury. But, Juwan Morgan has to stay out of foul trouble. They need him in the game no matter what. Not just offensively. They need him there defensively as well because they need that post presence on defense. And I know Clifton Moore's gotten some extra minutes here lately, but I don't think he's ready yet. Justin Smith, he's hit or miss just because he's a freshman as well. So they need their veterans to stay in the game, stay out of foul trouble, and keep playing good defense like you said. But they're gonna put out small lineups no matter what. And they've been doing that all year. That shouldn't be anything totally new. They like those 3-guard lineups. And, now that guys like Hartman and McRoberts are stepping up, they're going to have to take on bigger roles when guarding the post as well.
We're going to have to see a lot of good defense out of Zach McRoberts. And I think that Indiana needs Minnesota Justin Smith to show up in this game if they want to have any chance. I can name everyone on Michigan State's roster right now, and they would cause Indiana just a complete nightmare matchup defensively. It's that's not a secret. And to be able to score and create your offense when you have the ball is going to be crucial too, because this Michigan State team swats shots like crazy. One of the best teams in the Big Ten right up there with Minnesota. Bridges and Jackson they host a block party every night. So being able to create your offense and create their shots and lock down defensively I'm asking a lot out of Justin Smith if they want to win this game, because going up against those big men is just going to be torture.
Oh, Murphy, you touched on it. Staying out of foul trouble, I think that's huge for them going the rest of the season. And you want to see some emergence out of Justin Smith, Michael. Well, Justin Smith has been in foul trouble since the Minnesota game. The past 2 games, he really hasn't got it going. And last game against Northwestern, that early on in the game, Juwan Morgan had 2 fouls. Zach McRoberts had 2 fouls. Justin Smith had 2 fouls. There was a lineup where they had Josh Newkirk, Robert Johnson, Devontae Green, Colin Hartman, and Freddie McSwain out there. It's not a very big lineup. So foul trouble, obviously something they need to stay out of, going forward if they want to have success.
Yeah, and that's those freshman mistakes. You're going to see that with these young players, and that's kind of the scary thing for IU when you have to put so much on their backs, like you said with Justin Smith. You're asking a lot of them as freshmen. So we'll see how they can handle that, and Michigan State's going to be a huge test for them for sure.
Now, right now, with the drop-off of Michigan State losing to Michigan and Ohio State, Purdue is on top of the Big Ten, and they look like they might be able to run away with it. But then Michigan and Ohio State are right there behind with Michigan State. So just looking at the top 4, could Indiana finish in that 5th spot or possibly pick up a 3rd or 4th spot? But they do have a tough stretch coming up, going to Michigan State, home against Maryland, to Illinois, and then home against Purdue.
Yeah, I mean, Indiana, that 5th spot, that's definitely not out of the question, especially if they keep playing the way that they've been playing as of late. Yeah, it's a tough stretch. They have played 7 games in 17 days. 4 of those 7 games are against ranked opponents. Definitely going to be a part of their schedule that definitely tests them a lot moving forward. So I think after these 7 games, we'll really have a good barometer of what this Indiana team can do. But if they keep playing defensively like they are and they're able to stay healthy and keep guys on the floor, I think there's no question that they can do it.
Yeah, I think they could take that 5th spot just because I think the Big Ten is kind of up in the air this year. Just about anybody can beat anybody. I know Purdue looks really good for sure, and their size when they face IU, it's going to be very interesting to see how IU handles that, just because they have Isaac Haas in the starting lineup who's 7'2". You want to take him out. Oh, hey, we have a 7'3" guy on the bench. So, I mean, that's going to be difficult. But I think IU can do it. I really do. And they're going to have to play well, obviously. But like I said, just anything could happen this year in the Big Ten. So I could suspect anything. Yep.
I'm less optimistic than you two, for a couple of reasons. One is their upcoming schedule. Their next 6 to 7 games are all going to be tough. I mean, they've got Illinois and Iowa down the road, but those are tough games when they go, especially when they go on the road.
Right.
Nothing's ever given on the road in the Big Ten, as we've seen. Secondly, yes, they're trending upward right now, but that schedule, especially without Deron Davis, riding high, that you have to fall at some point. This team isn't going to win out. That's not a secret. So, it's going to be a good test for them. And the teams that are directly below them, I think, is worth noting as well. Maryland, Minnesota, Penn State. Yeah. I mean, Northwestern only has 2 conference wins, but again, that's a talented team that can turn it around at any point. We haven't seen any signs that they could, but they might. And, Maryland's got a good paint presence. That's a mismatch when Indiana plays them. Minnesota, we know what they can do coming off a big year last year. They're kind of in a free fall right now, but Indiana's facing a very tough portion of their schedule. So those 3 teams that are directly 1 game below them or fewer, I mean, that could swing in one night.
So now, if they do finish in that 5th spot, they go ahead, maybe they win a game or 2 in the Big Ten tournament. Do you think they could pick up an at-large bid for the NCAA tournament? And then you have to remember the start they had to this season as well. What would that mean if they get an NCAA tournament bid for a guy like Archie Miller and for the fan base of IU?
Well, that'd be huge if they got an NCAA tournament bid, especially it was to Fort Wayne 90-69 first game of the season, and then you say, oh yeah, this team's gonna make the NCAA tournament. No one would believe you.
Right.
So I mean, that would be absolutely huge moving forward. And I mean, they got to take care of business. Right now, there's only 4 teams that are guaranteed a spot in the NCAA tournament in the Big Ten right now. Michigan, Michigan State, Ohio State, and Purdue. At least that's the way I see it. Everyone else has to earn it. And like you guys said, the Big Ten's very up in the air this year. If you finish 5th, if you finish 5th in the Big Ten most years, you're gonna get an NCAA tournament bid. So that's why it's kind of interesting this year, because the rest of the conference isn't that great. But, I mean, surely a top 5 spot in the Big Ten should get you a place in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, I think it hurts them just because a lot of people see the Big Ten as weak this year. They're going to have to pull out one of those big wins, though. They're going to have to beat a Michigan State or a Michigan or somebody like that if they want to get that bid. And if they do get in the tournament, that's great. I think that's seen as a huge success on Archie Miller's part, because I don't think anybody really expected that. So I think that would be huge for them, even if it is, one of the last 4 spots. Anything in the tournament, I think, would be huge for Archie Miller.
It'd be kind of the opposite of last year, wouldn't it? It's the complete opposite of beating Kansas and North Carolina, then losing to Fort Wayne and Indiana State, and then ending up in the tournament when you're not supposed to. It's there for the taking. I think a top 5 finish in the Big Ten. The Big Ten might only get 5 or 6 teams in the tournament this year. They may not even get 6. Yeah. But if you finish top 5 in the Big Ten every year, that's going to get you in. This year, it's a little dicier, but I think that still gets the job done. I'd have a hard time believing that they could sit down and look at Indiana's resume and their growth, and if they were to finish top 5, that would have to include a win over a team like Ohio State, Michigan, maybe an upset over Michigan State, and also take care of the teams that they have to take care of, Penn State, Nebraska, Illinois, Iowa. If they can take care of the teams they need to take care of, get one decent win, call it a Michigan, or Ohio State, and beat Michigan State or Purdue, they get 3 tries at those 2 teams combined. If they can pull off one of those and take care of the teams they have to, I think they'll work their way in the conversation.
Yeah, that's a good point. You have to win the games that you need to win. Those home games against, I'm not even sure really what their schedule looks like. But
Michigan State at home and Purdue at home. Those have to be big wins for them.
Right. Well, they have to get one of those big wins, but they need to beat those Penn States and those teams like that if they're going to get in the tournament. Yeah.
Absolutely. So let's just change the focus a little bit to the recruiting part and next year in general. They already have a good class coming in. 4 signees have already signed: Rob Phinisee, Jake Forrester, Demezy Anderson, and Jerome Hunter. And 3 of those guys are very good. Jake Forrester, probably the one who's kind of like a diamond in the rough. We really don't know a whole lot about him, but he definitely has the potential. What can those guys mean to this team next season?
Well, I mean, you look at it from this year, and the guys, everyone was basically a freshman in Archie Miller's system. Everyone was on the same level playing field. So now you bring those guys in with everyone else that's a year ahead of them. They're able to teach them more in the system and say, hey, look at this guy. He's going to do this. That's what you need to do. So I think that's definitely going to help the freshmen. I think Rob Phinisee is a very underrated point guard, and he is a pass-first guy, and I think he's going to fill the role greatly without Josh Newkirk and Robert Johnson next year. I really think he is going to. But also another guy who's not on that list, Race Thompson, because he's redshirting right now. He's he's not going to play at all this year. He's basically part of that class too. And he's been here a full season just working hard in practice. He's a big body down there. He's definitely going to help Indiana's depth in the front court next season, so I'm looking forward to him out on the floor too.
Yeah, I think Thompson's going to get a lot of minutes next year over the guys like Hunter and Forrester, who are just a year behind him. And I think the guards, though, Phinisee and Anderson, they're going to have to step up pretty quick just because IU's going to lose their guards, Newkirk and Johnson. Phinisee's going to have to be able to handle the ball right away. They're going to need a point guard, definitely. I don't think Devontae Green's the answer there.
Al Durham potentially,
Al Durham
but
maybe.
he's still got some growth as well.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, they're going to have some, candidates there, but I think Phinisee's probably the best option right now. And Anderson's going to have to provide some outside shooting. He's a very good shooter. So I think that's something IU's lacked all year. So I think he could really step up as well.
I'm stuck on Rob Phinisee. You say he's a pass-first point guard, which is true. He's also averaging around 30 points a game this season. So, I mean, if that's not a good sign, I'm not sure what is. He's undersized, so trying to, drive and penetrate and create his own shot his freshman year against some of these Big Ten guards is going to be a tough ask. But the fact that he plays the game from a pass-first point guard's perspective is going to be huge for this team's success next season and also his growth as he steps in, because we're imagining that next season he's going to be asked to do a decent amount for a team that really doesn't have a true point guard going into the season with Josh Newkirk on. So I think he's going to be probably the main contributor of this class. And Race Thompson, I'm expecting to be not quite a Deron Davis 2.0 next year, but I would imagine in practice behind closed doors, that's kind of what they're envisioning his future to look like.
Yeah, so I think I saw a tweet earlier in the year talking about Phinisee saying he's a pass-first point guard, but he can go out and get 50 points in a game and sit out the fourth quarter or whatever he wants. So, but then just looking ahead at next season as a whole, you have those 4 recruits coming in, possibly one more. We don't know yet. What are the expectations for next season?
Well, I mean, I think the expectations are going to be make the tournament, obviously, and depending on where they finish in the Big Ten. Say they do finish 5th. Well, how about let's go for top 4 in the Big Ten, maybe even Big Ten championship. I mean, I don't know. They're just throwing these things out there. I mean, it's not unrealistic, especially you see the growth that Archie Miller's already been able to do with this team. At the beginning of the year, they didn't run the same offensive sets, same defensive sets that they are now. There was a lot of teaching involved that they had to do to get them to this point, and now that they're able to run some of those offensive and defensive sets, that they're thriving in. So when you have guys that are a full year into the system and then you add a couple more that can easily adjust on the fly, I think this team, depending on where they finish right now, obviously you have to make the expectations higher for next year.
Yeah, I mean, you obviously want improvement. Making the tournament would be huge, obviously, if they don't already this year. But one thing that you have to take into consideration, they're going to have Juwan Morgan and Deron Davis back next year. Those guys could be studs next year. And I know the guard positions could be up in the air, obviously, but if the freshman class can come in and contribute right away, the freshmen they have now get even better. They get another year under their belts, obviously. They could be a lot better, I think. And Davis is the kind of the guy I see as they need him to improve and take the next step, or maybe in the next step after that, because they need him to be just as big a post presence as Juwan Morgan has been this year.
I think the expectations would be, and maybe should be, just take one more step. So if they finish 7th in the Big Ten, go top 5. If they're on the bubble come Selection Sunday and miss out, make the tournament. If they make the tournament in a play-in game, get a 9 seed. Get safely in there. So whatever they do this season, I think it's fair and reasonable to expect them to take one more step. I'm not asking for a Final Four run next year. That's completely out of the question, especially when, potentially the majority of your best guys are going to be freshmen and sophomores. But whatever they do this season, regardless of what it is, I think it's perfectly reasonable to expect they take one more step.
I mean, can I ask, if they get Romeo Langford, what does that even take them to another level? I mean,
It has to, right? I mean, maybe not a huge leap, but maybe another small step. I think it has to, right?
Yeah, I mean, the only problem with that is that I mean, you see whenever he comes to Assembly Hall, fans chanting Romeo, people tweeting at him, come to IU, all this stuff. There's so much pressure on him already.
yeah.
Is that I don't want fans to have this high expectation, like, oh, Romeo's going to take Indiana to the Final Four. Well, and he comes in here, he's still a freshman. He's still going to have to learn. High school basketball is a lot different from college basketball. There's no doubt that he's a great talent, and he will help Indiana tremendously if he does come here. But I mean, you should still be, kind of have realistic expectations.
He's still an 18-year-old kid.
Yes,
Right.
exactly.
So we've talked some IU basketball up until this point. We've talked some looking ahead at IU basketball. Does anybody have any final thoughts?
No, I think if this team keeps playing the way that they are defensively, and I mean, finds a way to shoot the ball a little bit better. I mean, you've seen Robert Johnson shoot the ball better as of late, and why not make the NCAA tournament? I think that's not out of the question.
yeah, I mean, just keep playing good defense, get one of those big wins, like we said, and beat those teams you have to beat. Beat those 8th, 9th place teams in the Big Ten, and I think you can make some noise and definitely be in the conversation in the NCAA tournament.
Yes, they could be in the conversation. I don't think they will, but they certainly could be. If they're not, let's not all lose our minds over it. It's his first season. They hired him for a rebuild, not a miracle.
I agree with you guys completely. I think this team has been fun to watch. Obviously, it was a rough start to the season, but so far they've won the last 3. They have a big test coming up on Friday against Michigan State, so we'll get to see what they're made of. But that's going to do it for the show this week. Be sure to continue the discussion on our Twitter page at IUSTV Sports and on Facebook at IUSTV Sports. You can always give any suggestions for the show and ask any questions you might have. Toss it up. Find out if we'll catch it. We'll see you next time.